Welcome to the third episode in our new Contested Collections series, a monthly online presentation hosted by Warrington Museum's collections team. The sessions will use objects from the museum's ethnology collections to take a closer look at some of the hidden histories and untold stories that these objects can tell us. In this third session, we will look at a glass spearhead otherwise known as a Kimberley Point, which is part of the museum's Australian collection. The spearhead is shaped with a piece of recycled glass bottle and is recorded on our collections database as being from northwest Australia. It was probably made by an Aboriginal person with a water-worn pebble and sheep bone. These objects were primarily hunting implements, but we will now look at how European contact with Australia transformed the Kimberley Point into an object of desire by European collectors. So what do we know about Kimberley Points? A Kimberley Point, as the name suggests, is a type of spearhead that was largely produced in the northwest region of Australia, an area known as the Kimberley. The area is famous for its outstanding natural beauty, and we know that it was inhabited by Aboriginal communities, as is evidenced through the rock art paintings and stone tools that have been found in this region. As briefly already mentioned, the Kimberley Point was not only used as a tool for hunting, but these were also items of prestige for exchange and may have been integrated into secret ceremonial contexts. Some of the more recent examples were made from fine-grained stone, as well as ceramic and glass. Prior to the use of glass and ceramics, as is the case more recently, the old stone versions, like the type of tools that were seen in prehistoric Britain, were less efficient for hunting than the contemporary versions. The advantage to a glass spearhead being that this could break off in the body of the animal, which increased its efficiency of killing. So what do we know about the Kimberley Point in our collection? Well, we know that the gentleman who donated the point was called Harry Francis Anstey, and he was a metallurgist and gold prospector who led the prospecting expedition that discovered the gold in the Yilgarn, leading to the gold rush that established Western Australia's eastern goldfields. Anstey was born in 1847 and educated at Rugby School. He later moved to Western Australia on the Yeoman in June 1887, soon to set up a metallurgical laboratory in Perth. The Kimberley is in the northernmost of the 9 regions of Western Australia. It is bordered on the west by the Indian Ocean, on the north by the Timor Sea, on the south by the Pilbara region, and on the east by the Northern Territory. The Kimberley was one of the earliest settled parts of Australia, with the first humans landing about 41,000 years ago. They created a complex culture that developed over thousands of years. In 2011, the population of the Kimberley was recorded at just over 50,000, and the region comprises an area of around 423,500 square kilometres, about 3 times the size of England. We know that early humans known as hunter-gatherers produced small Kimberley points about 1,500 years ago. They are likely to have used them as trading items as well as for hunting and warfare. The main producers of the spearhead points would have been Australian Aboriginals, who had a high level of craftsmanship. The points are at the pinnacle of Aboriginal stone tool working. According to some Kimberley traditions, the mythological figure of Wawdi, the spotted nightjar, invented the first stone-tipped spears. It was after 1885 that Aborigines focused their manufacturing on the more classic spearhead to satisfy the appetite of European collectors. The collectors were said to have been bewitched by the exotic nature of the artefacts, and it is a theory of some archaeologists that the classic Kimberley Point was in essence a virtuoso tourist art. Little evidence of these spear points in the archaeological record in prehistoric Australia is thought by some archaeologists to be evidence of the lack of investment in time and effort by the first Aboriginals to construct these objects, which were so prolifically produced by their ancestors. Some archaeologists suggest that Kimberley points were depicted in illustrations as far back as 1810, several decades before the Europeans settled in Australia, meaning that they were probably common in prehistory. The absence of classically shaped spear points at ancient sites has been attributed by some archaeologists to the actions of the male boverbird. Common in northern Australia, boverbirds convert objects of various colours and shapes and use them to decorate their boas, which are made from twigs. Kimberley points were made by a production method known as pressure flaking, as were most stone tools. The method involved finding a suitable piece of stone such as flint, obsidian or quartzite, which could undergo a process known as lithic reduction. This basically involved chipping away at the stone's edges with a larger, harder stone. Though this often was a slow process, a sharp edge was produced, making it ideal for using as either a spear or arrowhead when attached to a wooden shaft. Additional to old glass bottles, some more contemporary points were made from ceramic telegraph wire insulators. The spearheads vary widely in style and size, with at least 4 types having been identified. The most known type are the long points, with tooth-like edges, created by the precise removal of small flakes along the point sides. Examples of these points can be seen in many Australian museums and are almost completely absent from ancient sites. The first known landing in Australia by the Europeans was in 1606 by Dutch navigator Wilhelm Janszoon. During the 17th century, around 29 other Dutch navigators explored the western and southern coasts, and these were responsible for naming the continent New Holland. Towards the end of the century, a certain Lieutenant James Cook charted the east coast of Australia for Great Britain. The British decided to establish a penal colony at Botany Bay, and in the century that followed, further ships arrived to establish further colonies. The Europeans ventured into Australia's interior, and sadly the indigenous people were greatly weakened and suffered a reduction in their population, thanks to European diseases and conflict with the colonists at this time. At the time of European contact, it has been estimated that the existing population of Australia was at least 350,000. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that a population as high as 750,000 could have been in existence. By early European settlers, the indigenous hunter-gatherer lifestyle was described as arduous and miserable, whilst Lieutenant James Cook percolated that the indigenous people may even be happier than the Europeans. In essence, these objects are an example of the adaptive reuse of Western technology by non-Western culture. Archaeological research shows that in the southeast Kimberley, bifacially pressure-flaked points, essentially points which have flaking on both faces, are certainly present in the record from around 1400 to 1000 calibrated BP. It's been deduced that the manufacturing of Kimberley points reached its pinnacle after AD 1885. At this date, there was an intensification in the volume of points produced, and the design of the point was becoming increasingly more formalised. The archaeological record shows that the changes in the numbers and formalisation of the shape of points produced after AD 1885 is linked to the social changes brought about following the European settlement. These changes to the design of the shape of points is also thought to have been influenced by non-Aboriginal collectors who designed the points based upon the form of their point. Therefore, we can see that a desire for a particular form of point fueled the production of a more formalised design. The points functioned as virtuoso tourist art to collectors and antiquarians who saw them as authentic ethnographical artefacts. The collectors were also captured by the mysterious nature as to how the points were physically produced. There is also evidence to suggest that the points played a role in developing a sense of social identity amongst the 19th and 20th century collectors and Aboriginal people, particularly hybrid masculinities. For example, the points have been shown to have been produced by men who had been dislocated from their traditional country. So there are theories about connections between the production of the points and the development of new hybrid social identities. After the European contact with Australia, artefacts such as scrapers, adze and hardwood tools drop out of the archaeological record as metal is introduced. However, there was what has been termed a revival of spear points. We know that they had value as trade commodities, but some archaeologists also believe that the points satisfied another need, that being the expression of oneself in the hierarchy of a community. As Aborigines were forced by the government into more sedentary lifestyles, less pastoral, they lost their opportunity to display their masculinity and accomplishment through tracking or hunting. So that's this month's Contested Collections episode completed. Next month we will be looking at our Egyptology collection, focusing upon the role played by Napoleon Bonaparte in the removal of Egypt's cultural heritage and how this has influenced museum collections throughout Europe, including the Louvre Museum and British Museum. I hope that you can join us next time.